It's the Metro on WDET. I'm Robyn, Vincent. We begin with a phone call that some people in Metro Detroit are dreading right now. The one where you find out the place you came from doesn't exist anymore. Abbas Alawieh got that call recently. His 91-year-old grandmother's home in Lebanon was destroyed by the Israeli military. She is displaced among hundreds of thousands of Lebanese civilians with nowhere to go. Abbas grew up in Dearborn. He co-founded the Uncommitted movement that mobilized more than 100,000 Michigan voters in the 2024 Democratic primary. Now he's a candidate for Michigan State Senate in District 2, which includes Dearborn, Dearborn Heights, and parts of Downriver. But we didn't ask him to join us today to talk about his campaign. He's here because he's living through something that other families across Metro Detroit are also facing. The experience of watching war destroy the people and places you love from the distance of an American living room. Abbas, welcome to the Metro.
Thank you so much for having me, Robyn.
So first, your grandmother, she's 91. Her home has been destroyed. What have you been able to learn about where she is right now?
So my grandmother, like hundreds of thousands of people who live and work and play in South Lebanon, is among those who are internally displaced in Lebanon. She's currently in a cramped two-bedroom apartment with 15 to 20 of our family members in Beirut. And she's in a part of Beirut that is immediately adjacent to some of the areas that are experiencing some of the heaviest airstrikes by the Israeli military in heavily populated civilian areas.
This must be extremely stressful for you to think about your grandmother at the age of 91. Home is such an anchoring force, and she doesn't have that anymore. And you talk about her being in Beirut. Lebanon is a small country. It's smaller than the state of Connecticut. A lot of people in the U.S. don't know as much about what's happening there. What can you say about what life is like there right now?
Right now, we have hundreds of thousands of people, nearly 1 million people, who were living their life, tending to their land, trying to live with dignity like my grandmother, who many of whom don't have the luxury that she's living in an apartment. Many of whom are sleeping in their cars or don't have even that to be able to count on. It's also a re-traumatizing situation. It's not just a traumatizing situation, it's a re-traumatizing situation. My grandmother, the home that she was living in, had actually been destroyed by the Israeli military twice before. It was destroyed in the 70s. It was destroyed again in the early 80s. And I have the experience as an Arab American kid of going in the year 2000 and seeing her and my grandfather rebuild the home where it once stood. And I got to see my grandmother live in dignity in the home that she was aging in place in a home that was really beautiful, Robyn. If I were to, I wish I could invite you there for the late night hangouts where it's 2 a.m. There's 20 people still hanging out, all of them singing and dancing. Very few of them actually live there, but half of them will probably stay the night. That's the kind of joy and beauty that exists in my grandmother's home. The idea that it doesn't exist anymore has so many of us feeling absolutely and fundamentally perplexed, especially since the deeply unfortunate and disturbing reality is that it's my own tax dollars as an American that are sent overseas to destroy homes like my grandmother's. And the part that is really getting to me right now, since I am a candidate for state senate and I'm on the campaign trail, one of the tenets of my campaign actually has to do with my relationship with my grandmother, dignity for our elders. I'm having conversations with senior citizens across the district about how they feel ignored by our government. And I'm having to square that with my government sending our taxpayer dollars to destroy my grandmother's home instead. It doesn't make any sense, and we've got to put a stop to it.
You're talking about a cycle of displacement, bombing, displacement. I mean, as you have noted, you've been here before. I'm thinking back to in 2024 when you were on NPR, your hands were shaking. You described calling your grandmother, and she told you, if I die in this strange place, it'll be hard. Meaning she was not in her home. She had been displaced. What is it like for you to live inside this cycle, viewing this cycle of displacement, bombing, displacement, and watching it from Dearborn?
Yeah. So just to give you a little bit about my grandmother and how she's doing right now, the little things that she's grounded in, the little trinkets that are on display in her bedroom, the covers that she prefers at night in her old age that make her feel comfort, the short walk that was specifically designed so that she can age in place with dignity from the bedroom to the bathroom. Those things don't exist in her life anymore. And what my aunt is telling me is that my grandmother, even in the past week since her home was destroyed by the Israeli military, has experienced a very sharp cognitive decline. She's stuck on just remembering one thing after another of the things that they've taken from her, that she will probably never see again. That sense of safety that all of us deserve, especially in our old age, has been denied of her, and this has been denied for her. And what it's like watching it from Dearborn specifically, and it was really hard, Robyn, I got to be honest with you, when we got news of the destruction of our family home, I had very difficult conversations with my family, with my father. And I said, I'm running to represent a district where this is not a unique experience. In fact, many people have experienced the loss of their family home, and worse, many people have experienced family members who've been injured or even have had their lives taken by these airstrikes by the Israeli military. I said, I want to speak about it publicly because my experience is not unique. I'm running in a district where a lot of people have this very unfortunate expertise of knowing what it's like to support their family members through war. And it was hard. The conversation I had with my dad was, Abbas, if you talk about this publicly, then the attacks that'll come for you, the bad faith misinformation that'll say maybe something nefarious was happening in your family home, that maybe you deserved to be bombed. And that level of inhumanity, that unfortunately, because of an American foreign policy that treats civilians in this part of the world, in the Middle East, as disposable, when we're watching the death count go from 100 to 200 to 500 to 1,000 plus, that is exactly why I needed to talk about this publicly. Because if people are going to come and say, oh, well, maybe something nefarious was happening at your grandmother's home, guess what? My grandmother's 91 years old. If she's capable of some kind of terrorism, I don't know what it could be.
I do want to talk more about the weight that you're feeling to use your platform to talk about this, because it is not a unique experience, and because there are other Metro Detroit families who are experiencing this too. But first, we should address what you're talking about, which is that Israel says it's bombing Lebanon to remove the group Hezbollah, which the U.S. classifies as a terrorist organization. So what do you make of that explanation?
I think it is on Israel to explain whether they think that a 91-year-old grandmother is Hezbollah. My grandmother is guilty of only one thing. she prays way too much and too often for the people she loves. I wake up every single morning, like 100 people in my extended network, with a personalized prayer from my grandmother that she speaks into her phone via WhatsApp, and sends off to our family here and prays for us in this country. That is what my grandmother is guilty of. And the reality is, the Israeli military right now, if we just broaden the scope a little bit, they're conducting mass demolitions of entire cities. You can't say the entire cities are Hezbollah. You can't say every mosque in a particular area is Hezbollah. That is that is categorically false, and it's part of a larger problem of treating a group of people as disposable. But the thing about watching it from right here in southeastern Michigan is I feel like in our beautiful mosaic, a beautiful multicultural mosaic of southeastern Michigan here, the fact that we have so many people who are directly impacted by the war in a lot of ways is a gift to our country, because we have expertise right here in southeastern Michigan that understands, not theoretically, but materially, physically, in our bodies, why it is that our country must veer away from this policy of funding endless wars. And right now, the White House, it is reported, is going to be requesting an additional $200 billion for Trump's illegal war. And I think we've got to listen to those families who have family on the other end of these bombs and really grapple with whether or not that makes any sense. And I contend that it doesn't. I contend that our U.S. senators hopefully should be among the leaders who stand up and forcefully push back and say, no more funding for endless wars. We've got to protect our seniors here instead. We've got to protect our veterans here instead. We've got to protect the people who really matter, not destroy other people's lives whose humanity clearly this administration thinks doesn't exist at all.
We're going to take a break in a moment, but before we do, you mentioned your grandmother sends you personalized prayers. What does she say in those prayers?
My grandmother, she's a lover of poetry. And so when she prays, I'll have to find one for you and play it, Robyn. It sounds like poetry. It rhymes. And she'll say, may God protect your body. May God protect your name. May God protect your friends. May God protect your niece and nephew. May God protect your entire family. I mean, my grandmother's a very special person. I've shared this before, but when I experienced the war myself, I was a child in 2006, stuck in the bombings, and the prayer that she said at the time was, "May God protect everyone, so that we may be among those who are protected." Her prayers are expansive. I'm very lucky to be a recipient of them.
It's the Metro on WDET. I'm Robyn Vincent. My guest is Abbas Alawieh. He's a Lebanese American from Dearborn, co-founder of the Uncommitted Movement and a candidate for Michigan State Senate in District 2. We're talking about what it means to carry your community's grief and what this moment demands of Arab Americans in Metro Detroit. We'll talk about that more when we come back. It's the Metro on WDET. I'm Robyn Vincent. My guest is Abbas Alawieh. He's a Lebanese American from Dearborn, co-founder of the Uncommitted Movement and a candidate for Michigan State Senate in District 2. Recently, his grandmother's home in Lebanon was blown up by the Israeli military. It is just one example of the dire conditions in Lebanon. So today, as we think about the many Lebanese American families in Metro Detroit, we're asking what it's like to face this grief from an ocean away. Abbas, I want to go back. When you were 15, you were visiting your grandmother in South Lebanon when the 2006 war broke out. You've described sheltering in a basement, convinced you were going to die. Now you're watching as your own government is enabling the destruction of that same family home. I'm wondering, how did that shape your view of the world and your place in it?
Thank you for the question, Robyn. It's hard to talk about. I was, like you mentioned, certain. I was 15 and I was certain. I was consoling my own mother over the phone that don't worry, it's going to be okay. And I in that moment, I remember the feeling I was lying to her. I was like, I have to tell her it's going to be okay. For me, I walked away from that experience fundamentally convinced that if my fellow Americans knew the feeling of the feeling that a child experiences when one of the bombs that we send overseas drops on a civilian population, that nobody would be for the war. I walked away fundamentally, forever changed, and towards the idea that, you know what, not only do we have to be anti-war, just sort of, like as a, I'd prefer, war doesn't happen, but we have to feel that feeling with urgency, because no child should ever have to experience that feeling of, I'm certain I'm going to die because of bombs that America sent. What that does to people, it breaks spirits, it breaks communities, and it does not promote, I would argue, anything that is in our country's interests. What it did for me is it made me fundamentally anti-war, like so many Americans who, especially over the last few years, as we've witnessed our country prioritize funding for war over funding for taking care of people right here at home. Count me among those Americans. I am a pro-peace American. I am an anti-war American. I'm someone who thinks we should keep the money right here, stop sending it to terrorize kids abroad. That political position comes from that feeling of certainty that no child should ever experience, certain death, or be killed themselves because of a decision that American politicians made.
So this experience made you anti-war. It made you a pacifist. It also made you question, well, then what can I do to prevent things like this from happening in the future? I mean, it carved your political path.
No question. And one thing that I noticed as I got old enough to be to have a microphone myself, and I started speaking about it a little bit in my own community, it turns out that there are scores of leaders in our community members here in the Arab American community in southeastern Michigan who have that experience of war themselves, but who, because the inconvenient truth is that it's our own country that oftentimes was fueling these wars, we hide these stories.
Well, you're talking about duality of being proud to be an American, understanding the many opportunities that being an American can afford you, but then also having your eyes open to the way American foreign policy can affect, devastate, destroy your home country.
That's exactly right. And we're made to feel, because of the brand of patriotism that we are told is the only one that exists, that either you support the war or you support our veterans, for example. But no, we can actually be anti-war and still insist that our veterans deserve dignity and care, and that those people in our society who have served our country in any which way deserve care. We can still oppose the war and insist that we want America's best interests at every turn, because we know fundamentally that America's best interest isn't in driving entire communities, entire populations to a level of despair that like the one that we're seeing unfold in Lebanon with nearly 1 million people displaced. That there is a better way, and the thing that I love about our southeastern Michigan community is that people understand that fundamentally, like at a foundational level. And I think America, our entire country, would do well by following the lead of people who are directly impacted. You know, when I worked in Congress, I got to work closely with one member of Congress in particular. I didn't work for her, but I really admired her leadership, Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, who constantly insists that the people closest to the pain on any given issue ought to be the ones closest to the decision-making power. That's something we have here.
Are we listening to the people closest to the pain, more broadly speaking?
Yeah. I can tell you, not to get too political, but I can tell you who's not listening, who came and pretended like he was listening, and then went off and used the political power that he took from this community to go and bomb our families, is Donald Trump. That's why I was among the people who was saying Donald Trump is coming into our communities. He's waltzing in, pretending like he is listening to our communities, pretending like he's pro-peace. He had signs. He had signs saying the pro-peace president. He's not anything near that.
I want to ask you about that, actually, because I realize that this is a painful point within your community. I mean, after the 2024 election, some Arab Americans in Dearborn voted for Donald Trump. He came to the community. He made promises. Now those same families are watching their homeland bombed under his presidency. Is there a reckoning happening within the Arab American community? And if so, what does it look like? What are you seeing?
It's a good question. You know, I'm a Democrat, and I say that not to say the Democrats are right about everything or wrong about everything, but just in terms of where I'm actively organizing people. I'm a Democrat who experienced the escalation of violence in Gaza by the Israeli military, the onset of the genocide of Palestinian people, as an Arab American, and I was in my community and saw that Donald Trump was all too happy to waltz in and show himself listening to people, and too many Democratic leaders would not even step foot in Dearborn. And I'm looking at myself like, okay, you're going to blame Arab Americans for not being on the same page with you about a certain political strategy, but you won't even show up to listen to them. I think we have a similar situation now. And this is my advice to any Democratic leader listening, and really any political leader listening. If you are interested in what happens next politically for Arab Americans, I would advise you to join us in our communities. I would advise you to come and hear directly from the families experiencing what it's like to be on the phone with their family one night after another, not sure if their family is going to survive. You should hear those stories directly. Democrats, unfortunately, continue to fail to show up for communities, and that's why I think we need anti-war candidates up and down the ballot to run and win.
Well, you voted for Kamala Harris.
Mm-hmm.
That isolated you in your own community. You said you got a lot of criticism. People were asking you what could be worse than genocide. And she lost every swing state. And the way you're talking about Democrats right now has me wondering, do you regret that vote?
Of course I don't regret that vote. It was a difficult vote, for sure. I wasn't voting for Kamala Harris's stance on Gaza over Donald Trump's, to be honest. I do believe that maybe in her heart she believed differently than Donald Trump, but she didn't make any commitments publicly about how she would change her policy. And still, I voted for Kamala Harris because I knew that Donald Trump was going to be the person that he's shown us to be before. And I knew that Donald Trump was going to fall for Bibi Netanyahu's tricks that would eventually lead us to all-out war. And that's what we're seeing now. I think we have to be able to understand, and if we're going to be serious about this, right, we have to be able to understand that some of the bombs that that are being used right now to destroy homes like my grandmother's aren't bombs that Donald Trump sent over there. The reality is the unconditional flow of weapons to the Israeli military and other militaries worldwide that use those weapons to abuse human rights, to abuse civilian populations. That unfortunately has been a flaw of our foreign policy under both Democrats and Republicans alike. And so I don't think any specific presidential election is a referendum on which one will be better on foreign policy. Unfortunately, both parties have proven that they're not very good at this. But I do think that we have to organize in our communities and that we have a better shot at growing our anti-war movement under in that instance under a Kamala Harris administration over a Donald Trump administration, and I think we're seeing that now.
As you talk about some very charged topics, such as war in the Middle East and the relationship that President Donald Trump has with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, I see that you're very thoughtful. I hear you're very thoughtful about that. And I also hear that you're careful with your language. And it makes me think about the man who drove a truck into Temple Israel in West Bloomfield. You condemn the attack immediately. At the same time, you speak out every day against a war being waged by the U.S. and Israeli militaries. Do you feel a burden to prove that you can hold both of those things, that you oppose violence against Jewish communities and you oppose the bombing of your homeland?
For me, it feels extremely clear that the threats on our communities, whichever marginalized or minority community we're talking about, whether we're talking about Jewish Americans or Arab Americans or Black Americans or you name it, the attacks on our communities are fundamentally interlinked, and our safety is fundamentally interlinked. So the idea that somehow, for me, I'm just telling you how I experienced this at the personal level. When I saw the horrific attack on Temple Israel, I did not see that and think that's terrible that happened to them. I see that and I think, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening to us. We are one community with a shared fate here in southeastern Michigan. We are one community with a shared fate here as Americans. And so we have to be fierce in defending each other's humanity. And so, of course, when that man went and attacked Temple Israel, of course we have to come out and forcefully be fierce about defending the humanity of our Jewish siblings. And also, I invite southeastern Michigan residents, I invite the people of Michigan, I invite every American in our country to extend that principle of fighting fiercely for each other's humanity to Arab and Muslim Americans as well, who many of whom are experiencing, a level of destruction that can really feel debilitating for many members of their family. I think it's interesting. I haven't gotten a chance to reflect on this a lot, but I think there are many people in public life who, if we hear that their home was harmed in any way, people would rush to say, we stand with you and rush to express their solidarity. And quite frankly, I don't see from our political leaders this rush to express their solidarity with Arab Americans in the Dearborn area who are experiencing this level of destruction. And I don't say that to say, I can't believe you didn't show up for me. I say that genuinely from the place of we've got to be consistent across the board, and we've got to show up everywhere for each other. And for me here in southeastern Michigan, I mean, that just feels very clear. The bonds that we have between our Arab and Jewish communities. I sit on the board of an incredible organization here locally called Detroit Jews for Justice that does incredible work organizing our communities to promote their safety, to promote the health and well-being of communities. I do not see that as different than what I need to do as an Arab American. I see that as an extension of that work.
Abbas Alawieh, Lebanese American, Dearborn resident, co-founder of the Uncommitted Movement, candidate for Michigan State Senate in District 2. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much, Robyn. I appreciate it.
It's the Metro on WDET. I'm Robyn Vincent. Up next, Israel's wars are continuing, as we've been discussing. And many Jewish people in Metro Detroit are on high alert after an attack on a synagogue in West Bloomfield. We'll hear from a local rabbi about how his congregation is processing all of this. That's next on the Metro. Stay with us.